West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Let's untangle a tangled web that's been woven by Mike Roman, co-conspirator with Donald Trump in Georgia, along with his attorney Ashley Merchant, who apparently is coordinating with Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney's special prosecutor, in his divorce proceeding in order to interfere improperly with the prosecution against Donald Trump and Mike Roman. And now we know all about it in a new filing by Fani Willis just today in the divorce proceeding related to Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor in her office, where they lay out minute by minute what happened on January 8th in the apparent coordination between Nathan Wade, Fani Willis's special prosecutor for Donald Trump and the 14 others, and the ex-wife of the special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, who all of a sudden on the same day started filing things and trying to depose Fani Willis to obtain improper discovery and deposition testimony at the very same time that Mike Roman was alleging an improper relationship between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, that in his view, somehow, without any justification or backup, undermines and compromises the criminal indictment and investigation of Mike Roman and others without explanation. Now it's all, the worm has turned, and Fani Willis is going to have her day. Fortunately, she spent the part of the weekend having to defend herself from the pulpit of a church, a well-known church in Georgia, on the eve of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, in which she defended her decisions, her judgment, her discretion as a prosecutor to assign whomever she likes to the prosecution of Donald Trump and the others, and that the only reason that she's being attacked and that he's being attacked is because of the color of their skin and because they want to try to get her off the case. Listen, we've been following it on Legal AF for the last year. They have tried every which way they can, every which way but Sunday, to get Fani Willis off this case. And when the MAGA House tried and failed to have her come in for an investigation at the House Oversight Committee in D.C., and she schooled the chairman of that committee then, when that failed, when the Georgia GOP right-wing MAGA congresspeople in the House in Georgia tried to have her fired and removed by the governor, and Governor Kemp stood up for Fani Willis and said, no way. When that failed, what are you left with? One of the dirtiest alleged co-conspirators with Donald Trump is Mike Roman, Donald Trump's election day coordinator, who, as I've said before, is alleged to have been the mule who brought and coordinated the fake elector certificates from each battleground state to have them delivered to Mike Pence in a pressure campaign through members of Congress. That Mike Roman, the same Mike Roman who Ken Chesbro, the architect of the fake elector scandal and scheme, right, is testifying against. We already know that from audio clips of Ken Chesbro's testimony to the Michigan Attorney General in their investigation of the fake elector scheme. Mike Roman, as I said a couple of weeks ago on Legal AF, should cut a deal, but instead, he's just a puppet on the string of MAGA and Donald Trump, and has decided the best way is to have his lawyer, Ashley Merchant, let's put her up on the screen for a moment, okay, file a baseless, scurrilous, scandalous motion against Fani Willis, unsupported by any sworn statements, declaration, or evidence, and not citing to any relevant rule of professional conduct or ethics has been violated, nor addressed in any way how the indictment and the prosecution is somehow compromised by the fact that Fani Willis, a consenting adult, who's in her 40s, may be going out for drinks and having a relationship of some kind with a friend of hers named Nathan Wade. Right? And so now we have it. Now they went too far, as they often do in that world. And now they've been caught conspiring together with Nathan Wade's ex-wife in her divorce proceeding, try to undermine Fani Willis and interfere with the criminal prosecution, a point that will now be brought forward, I am sure, in new filings by Fani Willis that will be filed soon with Scott McAfee, the presiding judge in the criminal case. Filing today is in the divorce court because all of a sudden, in a 2-year divorce, where the parties have already told the court that their marriage is irretrievably broken, which is the magic language you use, that this Humpty Dumpty is not being put back together again, that the marriage is gone. And the reason that it's gone, as Fani Willis pointed out in her filing, and kudos, chef's kiss to her, is because the former Mrs. Nathan Wade had an affair with Nathan Wade's best friend. Yep, that'll do it. That usually leads to irretrievably broken marriage. And because the marriage is irretrievably broken, and the parties have maintained that, then what does Fani Willis, in her wearing her Fulton County DA hat or any other hat, what can she contribute in a sworn statement or a deposition in the divorce proceeding about what she is or isn't doing with Nathan Wade? It doesn't matter. The grounds for the divorce have already been established. She can't contribute to anything. So it's obvious that the only reason that she's being brought in on such short notice in a 2-year-old divorce proceeding is to undermine the election. And that's the conspiracy that's alleged in the motion. I'm going to read to you now that you know the players, such as they are. I want to read to you now from Fulton County DA Fani Willis's motion filed on her behalf, emergency motion for non-party deponent for a protective order, because they're seeking a deposition all of a sudden out of the blue in 2 weeks' time from the filing on January 23rd, 2024. Now here's what they lay out for this judge, the presiding judge in a divorce proceeding, and that will likely and certainly be presented to Scott McAfee, the presiding judge in Trump's case. And listen to the timeline here that's established by the filing on page 2. On January 8th, 2023, got so close to Jan 6th. On January 8th, 2023 at 12:01 p.m., the defendant in the divorce proceeding, Jocelyn Wade, the soon-to-be ex-wife of the special prosecutor, through her attorney, attempted to serve Fani T. Willis with a notice of deposition. That's just Q&A, question and answer under oath with the court reporter, as if you're in court. Jocelyn Wade is the defendant wife in the above titled domestic case. That's at 12:01 p.m. on the 8th. Also on January 8th, Michael Roman, who was defendant in the election interference case, through his attorney Ashley Merchant, filed a motion to unseal the divorce matter. Same day. Outsiders, drive-by, Mike Roman, no relationship to the divorce, files a motion to unseal something that for the last 2 years, the ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife of Nathan Wade, has agreed that it should be sealed. And now she wants it unsealed on the very same day that she wants a deposition. And on the very same day, 4 hours later, January 8th, 2023, also at 4:42 p.m., 4 hours after the divorce proceeding people sought Fani T. Willis's deposition, Michael Roman filed a motion to disqualify the district attorney, her office, and special prosecutor Nathan Wade from further prosecuting the election interference case, citing conflicts of interest, in quotes, with no backup and no support. All on January 8th. The worm is turning in this motion. So the motion goes on to say this high-ranking officials like Fani Willis get almost automatic protective orders, especially when their evidence that's being sought is not relevant, probative, not tending to prove any fact, true or false, in the matter. In an irretrievably broken marriage where the ex-wife has cheated on the husband, where they haven't lived together for the last 2 years, what could she possibly contribute? It's obvious that this is to harass, to conduct discovery improperly and to support, right, the skimpy, shop-worn, threadbare motion that was filed by Mike Roman in the criminal case. So they're trying to conduct in the divorce proceeding, dragging these two people through the mud, or certainly Nathan Wade wearing his "I'm a man trying to get a divorce here" through the mud. And so what the motion so perfectly lays out is that for 26 months, neither the husband nor the wife wanted this unsealed. They wanted it sealed to protect their privacy. And then all of a sudden, on the same day that Mike Roman files his motion to disqualify, is the same day that the wife agrees to let him unseal the record and to seek a deposition against Fani Willis. We smell a rat. Something is rotten in Denmark. And so this is how Fani Willis puts it. That on further information and belief, this is on page 8, defendant Jocelyn Wade, soon to be ex-wife Nathan Wade, has conspired with interested parties in the criminal election interference case. Read that as Mike Roman and his lawyer, to use the civil discovery process here in the divorce to annoy, embarrass, and oppress District Attorney Willis, right? And to undermine the ongoing criminal investigation. I mean, that's the most damning language in here, that it's being used to undermine the criminal case. And that's a bad thing. It's not a good thing. And so it goes on to say, in support of this contention, and then here's what they lay out on page 8. A defective subpoena for the deposition of the district attorney was conspicuously coordinated with pleadings in the election interference case. Specifically, criminal defendant Michael Roman filed a motion seeking to unseal Mr. and Mrs. Wade's divorce proceeding on the same day and within hours of defendant Jocelyn Wade's public request to depose Miss Willis as part of the divorce proceeding, meaning that Roman coordinating with the ex-wife, and the ex-wife, whether on purpose, intentionally or unintentionally, to get back at the husband, but what she's doing is interfering with the criminal prosecution, is going to take the deposition if she had her way, and then if it was unsealed, if the whole matter was unsealed, that deposition would then get filed by the ex-wife, and it could be used by Mike Roman and others to embarrass, annoy, harass Fani Willis and special counsel Nathan Wade, to back them off almost as an extortionist attempt here to undermine the prosecution and the prosecutors. And then it goes on to say that prior to the attempted service of the subpoena, the Wade and his ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, filed a consent motion. They both agreed to seal their divorce proceedings, and the court sealed it on February 10th, 2022, almost 2 years ago. It was only after defendant Jocelyn Wade sought the subpoena for Fani Willis that there was a request to unseal the divorce proceeding. This sequence of events, coupled with the absence of any relevant basis for deposing District Attorney Willis in an uncontested no-fault divorce, suggests that defendant Jocelyn Wade is using the legal process to harass and embarrass Attorney Willis, and in doing so is obstructing and interfering with an ongoing criminal prosecution. So I don't know what soon-to-be ex-Mrs. Wade thought she was doing. But what she's done is landed herself in jackpot and now is in a co-conspiracy with a co-conspirator of Donald Trump in trying to interfere with the election. And Fani Willis isn't having any of it and bringing it to light now. She laid in wait. She didn't rush to do a press conference when she was attacked for having the relationship. She knew this subpoena was out there. She knew she's going to do her litigating where it matters. Not on the courthouse steps, not outside a courtroom, but in a courtroom, in filings, on her feet, to defend herself. Maybe Donald Trump's lawyers take a page from that book, and not confuse, as Ron Filipowski of Midas Touch once said so perfectly, confuse a Newsmax interview with trial work, what you do in a courtroom. And so at the end, here's what Fani wants, and I think Fani's going to get it. Petitioner prays that this court grant a protective order quashing the subpoena, that she be awarded attorney's fees and expenses, and the alternative that she be given 180 days to complete a review of the filings, investigate and depose relevant witnesses with regard to the interference and obstruction this motion contends. In other words, give me 6 months to conduct an investigation as the district attorney. Oh, Mrs. Wade, you've bought off more than you can chew. And then barring a protective order quashing the motion, this court should order that Wade provide a scope of information sought in the deposition. In other words, what does she want to ask me about? And then and go from there, and that be awarded other relief as this court deems appropriate. Signed, a lawyer representing the Fulton County District Attorney. And then we got a copy of the witness subpoena that was served on her. We're going to continue to follow how Fani Willis so perfectly plays quadruple level chess against people playing Parcheesi and checkers in a courtroom, which is her natural, successful habitat and school. All of these lawyers, including Ashley Merchant representing Mike Roman. You thought Alina Habba was over her skis and drowning in her trial presentation in federal court? Wait till you see all of the lawyers against Fani Willis, who's now a very pissed off Fulton County District Attorney. And if Mike Roman thought that this gambit and going after her personally, misogynistically, racially, to attack her judgment, her professional instincts, her powers, was going to be successful in getting her removed and getting his indictment dismissed, he's got another thing coming. It's an old adage about when you shoot at the king. If you shoot at the king, you better be successful. Otherwise, you're just going to have a wounded, pissed off king. And same thing with prosecutors. If he thought he was going to take her out, and I mean that from a procedural standpoint, he's wrong. And now you just have a supremely focused and annoyed prosecutor who's going to come down hard on Mike Roman in front of the right court. Scott McAfee presiding over the criminal case.
It is Friday, the 19th of January of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little Yorkie, is the door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special, daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the Diner of Life. Okay, taglines are tagged, and here we go. It's Friday, and we had we decided, and that's the royal we, of course, you know how it works. Nonetheless, we decided to go with a relatively long opening there with the Medias Touch, their takedown. Yeah, it's like a takedown, but a deconstruction as such of the scandal, the sex scandal that apparently Fani Willis and her assistant DA there, or assistant counsel, they've been carrying on. So, yeah, which just goes to show that apparently all the rumors that we've been hearing about Lena and Danny, yeah, might be icky. God, that's icky to think about. I hate thinking about that. Regardless, I thought, what better day than the day that we have the French 77 as the featured cocktail here, well, at this salon and Speakeasy. Let's not forget about the Speakeasy. That's why we have Fridays. And the French 77 being the featured cocktail here. That this would be the day in which we would have, a little bit of gossip. Yeah, a little bit of dirt. But what were these idiots thinking they were going to get away with? It is like, I guess you're going to put the dirt for the whole world to see. It was under a sealed order, which I would say that the husband in this tete-a-tete probably was taking, kicking and spitting and punching about, saying, no, I'm not wanted under a protective order. She cheated on me, the boy. 2 years ago, sealed order, mutual, no fault divorce. That's something that the right wing guy here wants to get rid of. I wonder why. Anyway, so look, if you want to make it into Jerry Springer territory, then have at it. But in a criminal court of law, obstruction of that criminal case is a rather serious affair. Not just for the divorcee, but for Mike Roman, and I would say that counsel lady, too. Conspiracy, collusion is a very serious charge. What is a little bit upsetting is that, look, you would think that the way the media is structured with all this reality TV, and they just love dirt. We're not hearing anything about Fani Willis's filing here. It's just that she's got to appear to defend herself in this, apparently not using her office in a legal way, meaning that she's been just handing out dollars. Well, narrative, right? Somehow this guy gets all the breaks. Why is that? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, even old Kemp there fought against removing her, because this has been an ongoing battle from the very beginning, and this is the strategy that Trump does. He tries to impeach the DA, the judge's clerk, the jury. He intimidates the jury. Like I said, I think he should really be bound and gagged like they did Bobby Seale, I know there's supposedly laws that prevent us from doing that now because of that. And I will argue that actually they bound and gag people all the time. They're just not with inside of the jury, because that would be prejudicial. Okay? I mean, if I was in the jury and I saw a guy bound and gagged, I'd probably think that the guy was acting out and they had to shut him up. Now, would I be able to judge whether he was guilty or not guilty in that situation after seeing all that? Well, I would hope so. Yeah, we all hope so. But I think the judge in that case, or the judges, the appeals court, would say, can't do that. So now what they do is they put him in a timeout room. He can look in on it on closed circuit. And once he starts thrashing about on the closed-circuit screen that people can see him in, they put up, I don't know, Teletubbies. I would put Teletubbies bouncing around. Do-do-do-do-do. That's what I would do. So, they really think that they're going to get away with it. And I don't know. You have a corrupt judiciary now, stacked by the very right wing. And apparently, if you listen to them, it's Black Lives Matter and Antifa that caused them to want to come out here and abuse us like a drunken husband on a Friday night. Thanks, Dad. Well, some of us grow up, we can hit Dad back. Or take him to court. Punch him where it really hurts. And, make him atone for the sins that he has committed. And, I don't know, get out of here. Don't show your face anymore. You come back here and you mess around with my liberty, you're gonna get it again, buddy. Just don't do it. We could do that very easily, and I wish that we would. So, metaphor and hyperbole aside, what do we have in store for you here? We better get on it, too. So, yes, we will. What do we have in store for you in the curated part of this show? Not to say that the opening was uncurated. I'm just saying what came right after, up until now. Well, here in the Bistro Cafe, as we begin just weeks after executive editor Kevin Merida left the company, the Los Angeles Times Union plans to walk off the job to protest another round of layoffs. The Ohio Supreme Court reinstated a lower court decision to freeze $8 million in personal assets belonging to a former top Ohio utility regulator. MAGA guy. Could you guess? Well, what was he caught up in? He was caught up in a federal bribery investigation. Can't be fascist without a bunch of corruption. They go hand in hand. And a California court ruling could threaten a key source of funding for a disputed giant water tunnel project. Yeah, once again, it's Chinatown in California. You know the movie, Roman Polanski. I know he's on the outs, but it was still a great movie. Said a lot about the, the water wars in the Golden State. Well, after the break, we move to the chef's table where Poland's lawmakers voted to lift the immunity of a far-right colleague. Remember that? Who used a fire extinguisher to put out Hanukkah candles during a ceremony in Parliament last month. We can do that here, too. No more immunity for people who, just cross the line. And, speaking of crossing the line, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov dismissed a U.S. proposal to resume dialogue on nuclear arms control. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so and everything else as well. Across the page to the left from that chat room link is the link to our Patreon page, and I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole because we're going to get into these first offerings here right quick. But if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help our bills. So if you could do that, it would be greatly appreciated. And thank you to those of you who have been doing so these many, many years. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on social media, do so at Netroots Radio. And Tom takes care of those. And we all take care of the Facebook page. And that's just how it works. So there, do it. Also, you can follow me on social media at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diaries on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, so you can read the actual articles by the actual reporters, and that's very important. You can also follow the show on Twitter, such as it is, meaning the show and Twitter, at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Etc. doesn't include Stitcher because Stitcher is just not etc. anymore. Not even Premiere. All right. I'm never going to get over it, apparently. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, since there is a strike going on and we're not reading anything that has anything to do with the LA Times, from the LA Times, okay? So this comes from the Daily Beast by Corbin Bullies. Bullies? The Los Angeles Times Union walked off the job for a day today, Friday, to protest its paper's plans to enact another round of layoffs it announced just last night. Wake up. The changes to our contract that management is trying to pressure us into accepting are obscene and unsustainable, Brian Contreras, chair of the Guild's Unit Council, said. If this newsroom will ever be a place where reporters can have a reliable, steady job and put down roots in Los Angeles, that will only happen through the preservation of our seniority protections. And the Times said it was disappointed in the Guild's decision, but it respected its right to strike, especially since everybody's getting replaced by artificial intelligence. We're just going to take everything that you've written, and you'll see here in our bylaws, we own everything that you've written. And we're going to teach them to write like you. Why do we need you? See where this is going? Well, the company plans for layoffs were revealed by the Guild's bargaining committee in a note to members on Wednesday, half a year after the company shed 13% of its staff and weeks after its executive editor resigned. Julie Carr Smythe of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The legal dispute over whether it was appropriate to freeze $8 million in personal assets belonging to a former top Ohio utility regulator caught up in a federal bribery investigation has ping-ponged once again. In a ruling on Tuesday, the Ohio Supreme Court reversed the 10th District Court of Appeals decision and reinstated a lower court's order, allowing Sam Randazzo's assets to be frozen once again. The High Court determined the appeals court erred on a technicality when it unfroze Randazzo's property. It's just the latest development in the years-long fight over property belonging to Randazzo, a one-time chairman of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Federal prosecutors last month charged Randazzo with 11 counts in connection with an admission by Akron-based First Energy Corp. That it paid him a $4.3 million bribe in exchange for favorable treatment. Randazzo has pleaded not guilty. Do they give him gold bars? They ought to be paying people in gold bars. That way they can hide them in their closet. And maybe no one will find them. Writing for the majority, Justice Pat DeWine, I wonder who he's related to in Ohio, said the three-judge panel was wrong when it unfroze Randazzo's assets in December of 2022. A decision that had been on hold amid the ongoing litigation. The panel reversed a lower court finding that the state had not proven it would suffer irreparable injury if Randazzo were given control of his property. Yeah, well, what would he do with it? The problem is that the irreparable injury showing was not appealable, DeWine wrote. Instead, when Randazzo wanted to object to a Franklin County judge's unilateral decision from August of 2021, granting Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost's request to freeze his assets, the appropriate remedy would have been a full hearing before the trial court, the High Court said. As a result, the court reversed the appellate court's decision. Yost made his request out of concern that Randazzo appeared to be scrambling to unload his personal assets like all grifters do. Embezzlers always want to transfer assets to people close to them that they can trust. In this reporter's opinion, well, it happens to be, well, stats have shown. Back to the article. What did he do? Well, he transferred a home worth $500,000 to a son and liquidated other properties worth about $4.8 million, sending some $3 million of the proceeds to his lawyers in California and Ohio. During oral arguments in the case this summer, lawyers disagreed sharply over whether the assets should have been frozen. An attorney for Yost's office told justices that Randazzo was spending down criminal proceeds when the attorney general moved in to freeze his assets. Randazzo's lawyer argued that the state needed more than unsupported evidence of a bribe to block Randazzo's access to his property and cash. The bribe that First Energy said it paid Randazzo was part of a scheme that a jury determined was led by Householder, the then Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder, and 4 others. And that was to win the speakership, elect allies, pass a $1 billion bailout of 2 aging First Energy affiliated nuke plants, and block a referendum to repeal the bailout bill. Householder, a Republican, and lobbyist Matt Borges, a former chair of the Ohio GOP, were convicted on racketeering charges in March for their roles in the scheme. Householder, considered the ringleader, was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and Borges to 5. Crest brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A California judge says a nearly 65-year-old law does not give the state permission to borrow billions of dollars it would need to build a large water project, a decision that could threaten a key source of funding for a controversial plan backed by Governor Gavin Newsom to build a massive underground tunnel that would reroute a big part of the state's supply. The Department of Water Resources approved a resolution in 2020 to borrow money for an unspecified Delta program. The agency said it could borrow this money without asking for permission from the state legislature because a law, last amended in 1959, says it can make changes to a portion of the state water project, a complex system of dams and canals that supplies water to about 27 million people. But environmental groups and several Central Valley counties say that resolution was too broad. They say what the agency wants to build is a tunnel that would be outside the scope of the law. The department's latest proposal is to construct a tunnel about 45 miles long and 36 feet wide, able to carry 161 million gallons of water per minute out of the Central Valley to the densely populated southern portion of the state. Oh, they're trying to steal the water again. First they took the Feather River, then they took the Kern River. Now they're going to take everything from the Delta. Well, after years of lengthy court proceedings, Sacramento Superior Court Judge Kenneth C. Menemeyer agreed with the counties. He said that the state's definition of the project leaves the door open for the state to build whatever it wants, which he said is not allowed under the law. Menemeyer emphasized that his ruling was quite narrow, only applying to the Newsom administration's unspecified Delta program as defined by the Department of Water Resources resolution. Well. All right, let us now get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, First It Giveth. After the team of Bloom and Wong gave us last year's surprising entry into the January horror dump category, Megan, expectations were high for director Bryce McGuire's Blumhouse debut, Night Swim. This time, no creepy dolls or ultra-violence. This one's more from the suburban horror genre, a la Stephen King. Now, the cross into spoiler territory is a bit blurry with these types of movies because part of what makes them what they are is how they do the reveal. It's probably not a spoiler to mention that we're dealing with a haunted swimming pool, but it might be to mention the particular brand of long-standing malevolence that's revealed, unless I already hinted at it. The setup starts off with a perfect American family. The dad, Wyatt Russell, is a pro baseball player dealing with a potential career-ending medical condition. Mom is Banshees of the Inisherin's Carrie Condon, and she's worried. Then there's a son and a daughter and an unfortunate cat. Oh, sorry. Anyway, they move into a place near Minneapolis with the big star of the film, the pool, which does its thing with some pretty standard tropes. The lights blink with an accompanying electrical buzz when things are happening. Black goo emanates from the afflicted swimmer's facial orifices. That sort of thing, but it's well shot with some deft underwater angles, good transitioning from the sunny and bright to the lurking darkness, and there are some neat jump tricks. Veteran Jody Long, in her only scene, tells all in as classic a demented rant as you'll see on screen. Worth it, even though you'll have probably figured out what's going on by the time it rolls. Box office and critics' responses will probably say more about whether we see a Night Swim 2 than the building trade solution we get for an ending. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Do people confess to crimes they didn't commit? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. It certainly sounds counterintuitive, but false confessions happen far more often than you suspect. Take, for example, the case of Andrew Royer, who, in 2005, was convicted of a strangulation homicide and sentenced to 55 years in prison. There was no physical evidence connecting him to the crime, and so his confession was a vital part of the case against him. The problems with the confession? Mr. Royer was particularly susceptible to being manipulated by the interrogating officer because he is developmentally disabled. And the interrogation stretched over 2 days. And Mr. Royer could not relate any of the details of the crime because he had no involvement, and so the police officer supplied those details and then stated that they came from Mr. Royer, which they didn't. As the Indiana Appellate Court put it, the investigating officer simply withheld the truth, resulting in Mr. Royer spending 16 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. 16 years later, the truth came out. And the city of Elkhart, Indiana, apparently has no question about the police misconduct and settled with Mr. Royer for the trauma of his wrongful conviction and 16 years in prison that he can't get back for $11.7 million. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. Racing the clock, the Louisiana legislature meets this week to hash out new court-ordered congressional voting districts, with 2 of them being majority black. They're also considering new state Supreme Court districts. In November 2023, the Fifth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals ordered Louisiana's legislature to draw new congressional maps. In a state with almost 1/3 African-American population, black voters demanded they be given a second district to elect the candidate of their choice under the Voting Rights Act Section 2. Currently, only 1 of 6 congressional districts is majority black. GOP leaders attempted to block the decision, but ultimately were given until January 31st to pass new maps. The Louisiana Illuminator reports newly sworn-in Governor Jeff Landry, a supporter of the current maps as Attorney General, told the legislature it was out of legal options and to pass new congressional and state Supreme Court maps with 2 majority black districts. Both maps passed out of their committees Tuesday. In calling the special session, Governor Landry also asked the legislature to close the state's primaries by prohibiting unaffiliated and third-party voters from participating, unless the parties decide to allow it. The maps must be adopted before the end of the special session, January 23rd. We have links to the local reporting at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day Lewis Hine photographed child workers standing on spinning frames to mend threads and replace empty bobbins at the Bib Mill No. 1 in Macon, Georgia. It was just one example of the appalling use of children in industrial labor. Hine built his career on photographic portraits of young miners and mill workers, child cotton pickers, and factory workers. In 1908, he was hired by the National Child Labor Committee Committee to document child laborers across the country. For the next 15 years, Hine would contribute over 5,000 photographs to the cause of ending child labor. Photo historian Dale Kaplan described the ways in which Hine captured these images, writing, "Hine, the gentleman actor and mimic, assumed a variety of personas, including Bible salesman, postcard salesman, and industrial photographer, making a record of factory machinery to gain entry into the workplace. When unable to deflect his confrontations with management, he simply waited outside the canneries, mines, factories, farms, and sweatshops with his 50 pounds of photographic equipment and photographed children as they entered and exited the workplace." NCLC investigators referenced the photographs in reports on particular industries and locations. The NCLC also used the photographs to illustrate its own publications and succeeded in placing them in newspapers, progressive publications, and exhibits. One NCLC poster that featured Hine's portrait read, "Making human junk. Shall industry be allowed to put these costs on society?" By 1912, the NCLC persuaded Congress to create a United States Children's Bureau. The two organizations worked together to investigate abuses of child laborers. Years of legislative and judicial battles followed, until finally, in 1938, Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit, foggy conditions, looking for highs in the mid to upper 50s, so a bit warmer than yesterday. Generally cloudy throughout the day with no rain today or tonight. Winds will be light and variable. Cloudy tonight. Lows in the mid 40s. And then Saturday morning, early rain showers will begin and then will evolve into more steady rain in the afternoon. Highs once again in the mid to upper 50s. Winds light and variable. And we're looking at about a quarter inch of rain just during the day on Saturday. And then another week or more of rain every day. So we'll see what's going to happen to football. Huh? All right. Like important stuff, you know. Pollen is rated as none here in our little hamlet of Rogue River. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is in the good range at 18 parts per million. And that daytime UV index is low at level 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.87 inches. Visibility is down to less than a half mile. And relative humidity is at 93%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 40 degrees and sunny. Paris is 32 degrees and partly cloudy with a potential disruption due to freezing. Rome is 60 degrees and partly cloudy with a potential disrupting due to heavy rain and flooding. It's been going around. Bagram is 36 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 32 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 68 and fair. Tokyo is 46 and cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 58 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53 degrees and mostly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 12 degrees and cloudy with a potential disruption to, freezing. plus a lake effect. And New York, New York is 28 degrees Fahrenheit, snowing, and they have a winter weather advisory. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Poland's lawmakers voted to lift the immunity of a far-right colleague who used a fire extinguisher to put out Hanukkah candles during a ceremony in Parliament last month. The vote means that the Confederation Party lawmaker Grzegorz Braun can face charges if convicted of destruction of property, insulting a religious symbol, and hurting a person. He could face up to 5 years in prison. Prosecutors want to present Braun with 7 counts that also apply to earlier incidents of aggression against the former health minister and public property. Lawmakers voted to lift immunity on each of the 7 counts. The incident last month was an embarrassment to the new parliament, which was in its first session following October elections, and to the new pro-European Union government that would be sworn in the next day. During a Hanukkah ceremony, Braun grabbed a fire extinguisher and put out the menorah candles. A member of the Jewish community was sprayed and hurt in the incident and hospitalized. Minutes later, Braun made a brief statement from the Parliament lectern while the leader of his party, Krzysztof Bosak, was presiding. The party later condemned Braun's statement. The lawmakers voted to allow Bosak to keep his position of Deputy Parliament Speaker, saying the party should be represented at that level, but the vast majority abstained or did not take part in the vote. The Hanukkah ceremony was peacefully repeated 2 days later with the participation of President Andrzej Duda in a sign that anti-Semitism would not be allowed. Braun was fined by Parliament authorities in December.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Vladimir Isachenkov of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Russia's top diplomat yesterday, Thursday, dismissed a U.S. proposal to resume a dialogue on nuclear arms control, saying it is impossible while Washington offers military support to Ukraine. Speaking at his annual news conference, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the West of fueling global security risks by encouraging Ukraine to ramp up strikes on Russian territory and warned that Moscow will achieve its goals in the conflict despite Western assistance for Kyiv. You mean being the aggressor. Commenting on a U.S. proposal to resume contacts in the sphere of nuke arms control, Lavrov described it as unacceptable, saying that Moscow has put forward its stance in a diplomatic letter last month. He argued that for such talks to be held, Washington first needs to revise its current hostile policy toward Russia. Well, how about Russia unconditionally surrender and maybe we might change our stance? Well, that's just me. White House National Security Advisor, a much cooler head than me, obviously, said in June that the Biden administration is ready to talk to Russia without conditions about a future nuclear arms control, even as Russia-U.S. ties are at their lowest since the Cold War, noting it is in neither of our countries' interests to embark on opening the competition in the strategic nuclear forces. But Lavrov charged that Washington's push for the revival of nuclear talks has been driven by a desire to resume inspections of Russia's nuclear weapons sites. Well, yeah. He described such U.S. demands as indecent and cynical in view of Ukraine's attacks on Russian nuclear-capable bomber bases during the conflict. Well, you know what? Unconditionally surrender, and then maybe we'll shake hands. Maybe. And with that, brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.